Good morning, readers. Well, this morning is the release of book number 13 in the Zachary Goldman series. They Came for Him. And so I'm going to be reading to you out of this one this morning. And there's also sample chapters on my website, and then you can pop over and buy it if you haven't pre-ordered it already. If you have, it should be in your inbox or on your device, and you can get started reading now. All right. Switching screens here. Okay, there we go. Zachary's phone rang as he breakfasted with Kenzie. He knew better than to answer it at dinner time, unless it was an emergency, but he didn't usually have to worry about it ringing during breakfast, so he wasn't sure how to handle it. He glanced at Kenzie, who raised her brows questioningly. Zachary decided he'd better at least check to see who it was. It could be Heather, his older sister, calling to let him know that there was a client he needed to deal with urgently. Or it could be Lorne Peterson, his old foster father and longtime friend, who wanted to reach him while Kenzie was still home to invite them over for dinner or let them know something that was going on. It would be rare for a client or anyone else to call him first thing in the morning. The caller ID was Jocelyn Goldman, his oldest sister. Zachary's stomach plummeted. He couldn't think of any reason Joss would call him so early. The fact was that she never called him at all. He occasionally called her to see how she was doing, ask after Luke, or let her know that he would be in the area and was hoping to stop in for a visit. But Joss kept herself separated from everyone else, not getting close emotionally. He swiped to answer and held the phone to his ear. Joss? There's been some trouble, Joss said, bypassing any greeting or small talk. Zachary swallowed. Had Joss gotten herself into trouble, or had Luke? Was it something to do with Madison, Luke's former girlfriend, who Zachary had rescued from human traffickers? Or with Reese, Zachary's young black friend who was romantically interested in Luke? Zachary had been trying to do his best to keep them apart, but Reese was a teenager and wasn't about to be told what to do. As far as he knew, Joss hadn't had any contact with her old life and had been staying away from drugs. Still, he'd thought the same of Terrell, his younger brother, before he'd given in to his addiction a few months earlier. Was she the one who was in trouble? Or was it something completely different? Since Joss kept to herself so much, there could be 100 things going on that Zachary had no idea of. He licked dry lips. What's wrong? Across the table from him, Kenzie had put down her toast and was leaning forward, dark eyes worried, echoing his concern. Luke has been arrested. Zachary swore under his breath. What had the boy done now? He knew that Joss had been worried about him lately, concerned that he could be tempted back to his old life. It was difficult to leave behind a life of addiction, and almost impossible to leave a crime syndicate like the one Luke had been involved in. Despite the abuses he'd suffered at the hands of his bosses in the human trafficking ring, it was easier to be told what to do than to have to make his own decisions. It was easier to be supplied with all the drugs and money he needed, as long as he lured in new teens and brought in more business. The approval of his superiors was almost as strong a drug as the substances he'd been addicted to. With long experience in the life herself, Joss had tried to explain to Zachary what a battle it would be to keep Luke not only clean and sober, but away from sex trafficking and the cycle of abuse that he'd become accustomed to. That was beside the fact that Luke had been making the organization a lot of money, and they would do whatever they could to get him back if they knew where he was living now. What for? Drugs, or? I wish it was that simple, Joss said with a sharp laugh. If it was only that simple. How could it be worse than that? It's murder, Joss told him boldly. He's been charged with murder. Okay, so that is a short little excerpt for you to whet your appetite. Now available in my e-store and on all the major retailers. You can follow the links below to pick up They Came for Him, book number 13 in the Zachary Goldman series. And I hope you enjoy it. Talk to you again next week.